Morning. It's time for another video. Yesterday I did a video regarding Ben Corson, the guy that I listened to last Sunday. I kind of wanted to share with you what he believes in and everything, and how awesome of a speaker he is. Wasn't able to find the actual message I heard, but I was able to find one that I watched on his YouTube channel, Hope Generation. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to wake up. But today is going to be a little bit it's argued by some to be the greatest philosophy on earth. Um, and then there are a couple more videos that are about the life of certain um, people and the legacy that they have left behind. Um, and there's 3 of them. I think there was 4, but I think one of them got taken down or something. I don't know. So I'm going to share those with you. But before I do, to respond, and I already responded to him on Facebook, but I feel like since he does have a YouTube channel, I feel like it would be safer for me to call on here. I have a friend by the name of Tyler King who saw my video coming out of the closet and said that he couldn't get past me with doing a whole bunch of like I am prone to doing. I don't know why. Personally, I feel like he couldn't get past it because he felt like me saying either was a habit that I'm trying to break, which I personally feel like it is, or maybe he feels like I'm in denial of something. I really don't know, but he was talking to me, and what's interesting is when I knew him more, when I was like a few years ago, when I knew him more, back when I went to not only Sunday church but also Tuesday nights, he and I were like tight. I mean, we wouldn't hang. I mean, every now and then we'd hang out, but it wasn't anything more that was just past, meeting up for a college group. Um, so I don't know if he's always been this way as far as when he sees something controversial like this, he instantly assumes that it's for the sake of wanting attention and or being questioned. Neither of those was the case. I wasn't looking for attention because I pretty much already get enough attention when I'm hanging out with family or my friends and coworkers. So that's a given. But for the sake of being questioned, the only way that I would see myself wanting to be questioned is if I wrote on the status that I was sharing the video with was I would like to know what you think. I would like to know your thoughts on this. Nowhere did I do that. All I did was say that I'm coming out of the closet as a Christian agnostic. This is where I'm at in my journey. If you're open-minded to this isn't for you. If you are, this is. Um, and he basically was twisting my words and attacking me. And then I had another friend who, she wasn't attacking me, but I definitely could understand where she was coming from just because I'm kind of new to the whole thing. Is she said that while she is for everybody searching for truth and everything like that, she said that the title of my video was very misleading, which I can understand why it would be misleading, but I would disagree. I mean, you think about how a lot of people come out of the you hear the term coming out of the closet. Sorry, my eyes kind of I'm still trying to wake up. You see people, when they use the term coming out of the closet, it usually means, someone coming out of the closet as being gay or lesbian or bisexual or trans, But I feel like that the phrase coming out of the closet can mean more than just that. I feel like it can mean coming out of the closet not only for who you are sexually, but also who you are when it comes to who you are spiritually or religiously. Um, and so it's something where I can understand why it could be misleading. I think that I used it perfectly. I think that just some people get it and some people don't, which is why I thank God that through that whole Facebook debate that I had with the one person, Tyler, that um, I did have one person who understood me, and that was my friend Ocean. Shout out to Ocean, which also, just on a side note, even though it's she's not only a friend to me, she's also someone that um, back when we used to hang out, back when she used to live in Oregon, I kind of um, had feelings for her, and I kind of still do, but I'm not forcing anything. That was the old me. The new me is just taking it as it comes. So I'm still hoping that we can, be friends and hang out, and hopefully she'll return my messages about that. But you know, she's got a busy life just as much as I do, so that's fine. But all that aside, it is now time for me to share with you these videos. So the first one I'm going to do is the Advaita Vedanta, the greatest philosophy on earth. And this video, along with the three videos regarding the different teachers that have lived, these are by a guy named Koi Fresco, aka Vichuda Das. I would highly subscribe to him if you're into this kind of stuff. Um, and what's interesting is that, and before I play this, I just want to say that he's a lot like, and I don't know if I described this when I showed you guys some of those enlightened videos, but um, he's a lot like him in the sense that there are things that I would agree with, and then there are things that I probably wouldn't say I disagree with, but that they're just things that I'm wrestling with, and there's a difference there. So, so I'm going to share with you this one, and then I will comment on that, and then I will share and comment on each of these videos, and then I'll call it a day for sharing another video. So let me get this guy loaded up here. Grab that. Okay, let me add out of here. Okay. Alrighty, and then I'm gonna turn this guy. Okay, and then let me go here. You gotta be kidding me.
Me a comment letting me know why. You and me right now watching this video and acting out this video are currently living in duality. Or I should say the illusion of duality. And what this means is that we view ourselves as separate from anything else in some fashion. You're looking through what you consider to be a laptop, its own individual thing, or a smartphone, its own individual separate thing, and you see me as a human being talking as my own individual self, and you as your own individual self, separate from the couch or the bed or the street you're walking down. But what if this separateness is merely an illusion and there is no separateness whatsoever? That you and me, in all of reality, are oneness at its core. This philosophy is what's known as Advaita Vedanta, and it is arguably the greatest philosophy on earth because of what it entails once we understand it. Now, at its most basic form, oneness is also known as monism. Therefore, Advaita Vedanta itself is seen as a religion in some senses, but it's really just a philosophy based on very sacred and ancient texts. In Hinduism, known as the Vedas, essentially the end portion of the Vedas. The etymology of Advaita being non-dual, and Vedanta essentially meaning the ending of the Vedas. And if you look into the Vedas, you will see that the ending of the Vedas are actually what we consider to be the Upanishads, another bundle of texts in their own right that are absolutely brilliant in their explanation of empirically seeing and understanding this reality as we experience it through the human vantage. And that's what makes Advaita so powerful, is that it doesn't just claim that reality is one, but it shows through empirical understanding that we can awaken to knowing this oneness as well. And even in science, oneness is being proven in many ways, which we'll get to later. So before we go any farther, let's talk about what...
Oh, come on, Ed.
People all over the planet.
You gotta be kidding me. I hate it when this happens. It's okay, though. I can deal with it. Okay.
Which we'll get to later. So before we go any farther, let's talk about what non-duality or Advaita is versus duality. Duality means separateness, and that's really what it is. Abrahamic religions are dualistic. There is God, and there is me. There is the kingdom of heaven, and there is my soul. This is what dualism is. And on the worldly level, there is me and my mom, or me and my room, or the planet in the solar system. There are all these separate categories. And if we take that separateness seriously, if we see the illusion of separateness as a real thing, or accept that we are different from the cosmos or different from God in any fashion, we are living in Advaita, or dualism. We see existence as dualistic and as one thing being separate than another somehow. But Advaita is the complete opposite. In fact, there is no duality in Advaita because it literally just means allness. It means just oneness. No potential even for duality to exist. There can just be illusions of duality. So what this would mean is that I am one with you. I am one with my mother. I am one with my room. The planet is one with the solar system, and so on. All of reality encapsulated into oneness, or allness, or just thisness, is what we consider Advaita. And the wisdom behind it is the Vedanta. So Advaita Vedanta, which, as I talked about in a previous video, is the path in which I have evolved into through Buddhism. So to understand how Advaita works and why non-duality is so powerful and making such an impact on the spiritual world these days, and a little less and even in the scientific community at large, we have to understand a few basic terms that can help us wrap our head around the philosophy. Now, in the spiritual world, especially in Hinduism, we are known as jivas. Jivas means souls. All living things can be considered jivas. So if anything lives, if anything exists, if anything grows into a form and then passes into another, in any living way, any moving way, then all is jiva. We are jivas, bugs are jivas, animals are jivas, the water and the microbes in it are jivas too. This is on the small scale of how we perceive things to be, ourselves as jivas, and then the rest of reality, the whole of reality, of all encapsulation, of allness and even nothingness, beyond comprehension, beyond fathomability, is what is considered Brahman. And that's really what Brahman means. It's just allness. That's what it is. So even the universe being confined and being labeled as a universe, as a thing, does not fully encapsulate what Brahman actually is, because it is beyond even the universe, beyond space, beyond time, and beyond the laws of this reality. That's why our understanding and terminology for Brahman has to be theoretical in its own right. Since we don't know what allness is, we can only give allness a sort of name to allow us to just accept that it is everythingness, and that's where the word Brahman comes in. So if you can think of something or conceptualize something, it is not fully Brahman, because Brahman is beyond all possible conception. Now these are two basic terms, but in dualistic living, in Abrahamic religions, and dualistic philosophies, you and the universe, you and all of reality are separate. You are an individual, separate organism existing within totality, but not that you are this totality. They might inhabit the same domain, but they are not seen as oneness. Now, on a human level, this creates massive problems and is why we can see so much suffering around the world, especially in dualistic religions and people who live dualistically at all. This identity of being separate from our neighbor, from other people, is what creates racial tension, is what creates cultural abnormalities and normalities that go against what we consider to be other cultural advantages and ways of life. Think about Israel and Palestine, to name a very simple example, which causes war, suffering, devastation, and so much more damage to the world, is this dualistic mode of living, this idea of isolation and separateness as what we are. Because when I am just me, anything that goes against my meanness, my separateness, my individuality will cause me to become stubborn, upset, to fight back against it. And this is a volatile mentality to have. And quite frankly, it's why many non-dualistic philosophers and scientists view and agree that any dualistic way of living or religion is not healthy and not going to take us anywhere in the long run on a human communal basis. What Advaita Vedanta teaches the opposites, using the wisdom discovered in the Upanishads, this non-dual philosophy, the reason why it's considered often the greatest philosophy on earth, says no, you and your neighbor are not two different organisms. You are one. You are the same even. You in reality is just the same. It's all one. Well, how can I know that? How can that even make sense, we might ask? And this is where Advaita goes against duality and says the jiva, or the soul, is actually jiva atman, which means the universe incarnate in a seemingly separate form, or the unlimited self appearing temporarily as limited. The same way that the sun might appear limited if we are viewing it through the cracks deep in a cave. But when we can see the truth of what it is, we know its unlimitedness. That is what Hinduism, that is what Advaita Vedanta teaches. It is why this philosophy is so powerful, because it says, look, we might think of ourselves as just jivas, as just individuals, as just souls that are individualized and therefore limited, but you are actually jivatman. The atman within, or the eternal self within, is the exact same as Brahman. The eternal you, the unending you, is the unending existence of reality. We are just kind of living in a way that makes it so that we see separation somewhere in our world.
Oh crap, another ad. Damn it.
But when that separation disappears, you recognize and you can know through experience that you, as anything, are synonymous with everything and always have been and always will be, whether or not you are taking part in human conscious experience. Jivatman that you are, or the experience that you are having, is living in a way that has decided it is a mind and a body and a personality and therefore separate. But once these illusions are washed away, once we can learn and show ourselves how to see through this, essentially, we awaken to the unlimited self, and that illusion disappears forever. Atman is Brahman is a very famous saying. Atman is Brahman. The eternal self is the whole self. We just have to see through the idea of separateness. A very, very famous quote that applies to this that I really love goes as such. Human beings in a state of unawareness of this universal self see themselves as different from other beings, then act out of impulses of fear, craving, and malice. Now this awakening, this truth, if we can see it, is not just life-changing for ourselves, but globe-shifting for the collective human consciousness. And it's why this can be seen as such a great philosophy, because it expresses this in a way that is point blank. This is what it is. This is what you think it is. This is why you're wrong. And this is how you can know that truth. It's really that simple. There is no domain of God. There is no heaven or hell. There is no fear or suffering or sickness if we can see through this illusion of separateness and see that we are the unlimited eternal nature incarnate. It's the universe playing out the human, not the human thinking it's playing in the universe. Is a great metaphor to use. Now, granted, there are a lot of subcategories of Advaita and Vedanta. There are dualistic versions of Vedanta, but this is just the basis of what Advaita teaches at its core. If you want to know more, you have to continue seeking on your own time. So even though I can say this and this all sounds great, how do we come to know this eternal truth? How can we enact Advaita Vedanta in our lives and really come to experience and be this oneness incarnate and see through our illusions? All we must do, like I talked about in my simulation video, is transcend Maya, which I can say, but which is not easy in any sense of the word. Maya is the illusory reality of separateness. Separateness itself is a product of Maya. Anything that has a name or has an idea or has a limit to it is Maya. It is temporal, and reality is not temporal. It simply is. Because remember, ultimate reality is far beyond time and space. But this is the blessing of Maya as well, as if I can see that anything I identify and know to be a thing is therefore limited, then I also know it's Maya. So I can be existing in Maya, which I am living right now, and which you are, but I am consciously aware that I am within Maya, that I am within this experience of difference. And that is Maya. So all I have to do is move beyond perceiving anything as separate from anything else, and Maya fades away. We see and pass through the veil of it. Along these lines, Ramana Maharshi once said, even the absence of thought does not mean blankness, for there must be one to call it blankness. Knowledge and ignorance are of the mind, they are born of duality. But the true self is beyond knowledge and beyond ignorance. So even if we get to a state meditating of, oh, this is peace, of, oh, I am one with it, we're experiencing, we're thinking, we're labeling, and so we're not really fully with this allness. But we can come to know the true nature of Brahman and Advaita Vedanta, and that is the experiential route. One of my favorite examples of understanding how we currently live in Maya is of a cloud and the sky. We all know that clouds form due to water vapor in the atmosphere. And so we can look at these white, fluffy spaces in the air and go, that is a cloud. But it's only a cloud so long as we can identify it. And we know that clouds come into formation and pass out of formation back into the sky. So when it begins to dissipate, it's known as the sky again. The majority of us will always see the sky like this, a sky having clouds in it. But we don't really think of the sky as being the clouds synonymously, and that the words sky and cloud themselves are just made up arbitrary notions of expressing an unexpressible thing that we are experiencing. In this sense, that the sky is Brahman and the cloud is Jiva. So when we begin to see that the sky and the clouds aren't separate, we begin to recognize that Jivatman is Brahman, that Atman is Brahman, the cloud is the sky. And we begin to always see that the cloud has always been Brahman, that Atman always was Brahman. We just mislabeled it. And that's why, for me personally, seeking for so many years and doing so much research, that the more my practice evolved, it always flowed into this non-dual practice provided by Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. And wherever you live, especially in the States and even overseas, if you Google Vedanta schools or Vedanta temples, there are lots of places, especially here in Los Angeles. There's one that I go to every couple of days that teaches this philosophy and helps you understand it better than just this one video can do. Because even this video, for how long it is right now, doesn't fully grasp what Advaita Vedanta fully is. It's just a basic, or as basic of a miniaturization as I can make. Siddhartha Maharaj once said, when the mind is quiet, it reflects reality. But when the mind is full of motionlessness, it dissolves, and only reality remains. How can we implement Advaita Vedanta in these practices? Well, the Nectar method is great, the I Am method is great, but living out our lives and the actions we do help as well. So look into practicing devotion to this all-encompassing reality through Bhakti Yoga. through selfless work that helps quiet the ego, such as karma yoga, through self-reminders that I am the whole, that oneness is my eternal reality, through loving all of reality no matter where you go, projecting all of your love into everything is because it is all one. Doing this makes you more confident because you know your place, more loving because you accept everything as an extension of you, and as you being an extension or conception of it. You become this kind of unfiltered ball of love and energy and excitedness to do everything in life. It is a beautiful path, and to me, it is the path. If I could ever promote a single path to anybody on the planet, I would promote Advaita Vedanta. It is life-changing, and I think it can change yours too. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to like, subscribe, and leave those down below. I will do more videos in the future regarding this.
Okay. So there you go. There's the Advaita Vedanta. A couple of not a lot of couple. A couple thoughts I have on that video. One of the things that I find interesting is he talked about how Brahman, and how Brahman is beyond perception, beyond conception, and trying to imagine what God is like. What's interesting is that what's interesting is that you and then this is where again my this is where my Christian side comes in, but this is also where my agnostic side comes in, again, for just the sake of labeling. I feel like that there are some Christians out there who think that they know everything and anything that there is to know about God. Hell, they even think that they know exactly what God looks like and what he's going to look like when we die and we go to heaven, if, you know, they really are Christians and they do go to heaven. But then there are some who, while they believe that God does exist, they don't know exactly what he's going to look like, you know, and that even aside from his looks, that God is beyond perception and beyond understanding. You know, there are things we can understand about God, there are things we can't, you know, and this falls in line, I think. In fact, as I was watching this, I was reminded of another video by, not by this guy, but by Enlighten, the one channel that I showed you, One God in Many Forms. I'm not going to show it to you today just because I have to get ready for work here within like the next hour and a half. And I can't do it tomorrow because of work, but I can try to share it with you on my day off, Saturday. But he does a video called Hindus Make Better Sense of God Than Christians Do, which obviously at first, with first glance, when you hear a title like that, or you see a title like that, you instantly think that this is quote unquote satanic, that this can't be what, you know, what God could possibly be or whatever. But again, you know, as you know, Jesus followers or God followers or God believers, we're called to examine. You know, people who claim the name of God, who claim to believe in God and don't do any analyzing, they're not really true believers. In fact, some would even be hypocritical. But that was one. Another one was that, you know, he showed a few minutes of the sky and the clouds, and how we make the distinct dualistic we use dualistic terminology to say that the sky is Brahman and the cloud is Atman, when really it's just the same. And I don't know if he does this in another video, but you can also say the same thing for a body of water. You know, you can say that the body of water itself is Brahman, but a wave that's going like this, people say that that part of the ocean is Atman, but the ocean itself is Brahman, and that's kind of contradictory because the wave isn't Atman; it is Brahman or Jiva Atman. It's the same. It's just choosing to move in different ways. And it just makes me think that that not all, but some Eastern philosophies have it right, or at least close to have it right, just as much as Western philosophy claim. And so, um, and then my only other thought with this video is that, we all claim, or not we all claim, but I like how he said that, we're all one. We're all connected to each other. Like, I'm connected to not only what's in my room right now, but I'm also connected to my coworkers at work. I'm connected to my family, whoever that is, when I hang out with for the day, whether it's my mom or my dad or my stepmom or my cousins. I'm even connected to people who I may not know either very well or at all, and I'm just going by in passing, where I'm like on the bus, and I happen to strike a conversation. Like, I'm connected, and you know, I, it's something to not be denied. It's something to embrace and accept, and I actually think of this saying giving my thoughts on the video is actually making me think of a Jack White song, Connected by Love, which I may play for you at some point, maybe in the future. But yeah, so that's my reaction to this video. So now what I'm going to do is I am now going to share with you the 3 teachers, and I really hope that it can be 4, because he did do a video regarding Carl Sagan. In fact, I want to see if... Hold on a minute. Oh yeah, I think this may have to wait later then, because I can't find. I don't know what happened. Okay. So the very first teacher that I'm going to be so here are the 3 teachers. So I'm going to be sharing with you Stephen Hawking, which we all know. But some that you may not know that you may find interesting are Alan Watts and Osho Rajneesh. I think that's how you say his name. And I'm just going to show these guys and give you my takes on each of them. And I was actually thinking I was going to end it there, but I actually am kind of, since I'm passionate about this kind of stuff, I think what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to end this with a time of just meditation and reflecting, and just starting off the day with just being in the moment, just being in peace. Sorry, I just realized I just rolled my eyes there. My bad. Just being in the moment and just breathing in, breathing out, and just asking, God, the universe, Brahman, you know, what would you have me do today? You know, do you have anybody that you want me to um, be an example of true love? You know, is there anybody that you want to, you know, be vulnerable with me, whether I know them or not, you know, and all that. And so I think that's how I'm going to end my video once I'm done showing you these teachers. So the first one again, obviously, is Stephen Hawking because it's the first one.
When it comes to your smile, there's no such thing as a shortcut.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Welcome to Koi's Corner, a channel.
Okay. Okay, so it's back here. Okay. And here we go.
For personal and spiritual growth. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like, subscribe, and leave me a comment letting me know why. My name is Vishuddha or Koi, and welcome to episode 1 of my new series, The World's Greatest Teachers. Now, as with everything on my channel, I always advise that I'm no final source. I'm just a student myself, and what I share more than anything is just stuff that I find interesting that I want you to, if it sparks your interest, go do your own research on and learn about if you'd like to. And so I figured I've shared mainly theories, mainly religions, mainly ideas, but I want to share teachers too, people that I think will inspire you specifically. So hopefully the series brings light to some of the teachers that I think are the world's most important and ones that I hope you look into and learn about because they can help you too, both scientifically and spiritually. And if there's a specific teacher you would like me to speak about, please comment down below and let me know. And the most upvoted ones are the ones that I will start speaking about more because they're obviously the ones with the most interest. So to start with episode 1, we have Professor Stephen Hawking, who unfortunately just passed away last week. Most of us know the name Stephen Hawking, but very few of us know just what about him made his name such a worldwide thing. And this is because there wasn't one single thing that brought him to prominence, but the fact was his life was a prominent thing altogether. Everything about him was amazing and magical and awe-inspiring. And Stephen Hawking was born on January 8, 1942, and like I said, just passed away on March 14, 2018 at the age of 76. Well known for his scientific discoveries, he was also known for living a virtually full life age-wise while battling a disease or a substrate of a disease known as ALS, which almost always, once diagnosed, kills the person who diagnoses within the first few years of life. But somehow, Mr. Hawking, due to there being a little bit of a difference in his diagnosis, actually managed to live a relatively full life. And he didn't just survive for about 50 more years with this debilitating disease where he couldn't speak and couldn't really move on his own. He actually thrived with this disease, thought up new theories, won numerous awards, and published worldwide books that have changed the face of science completely, especially in the nature of black holes, which we are about to get to. Ironically enough, he even outlived the doctor which diagnosed him with this disease. So why is he one of the greatest teachers ever? Well, because Stephen Hawking is the reason that physics and theoretical physics specifically have become such a mainstream interest to the public. And although he did have a lot of achievements in the 60s and 70s, including proving that black holes can emit radiation using quantum theories, and discovering that they can even understand the nature of black holes in regards to our existence or why they exist. But when he really rose to prominence majorly was in 1988 when he released the book A Brief History of Time. As I said before, it is regarded as one of the most significant scientific books of the last century by far because of how accessible it was to the public. It really put physics and theoretical physics on the map as something that wasn't so far out, but it's something that we could potentially understand. It just took someone as intelligent as Mr. Hawking to simplify it for us. And if you haven't read this book, I highly recommend it. It is a mind-blowing book and one that I read in high school that really changed my life due to how I can now understand new aspects of science. It's beautiful. But after this, he also went on to publish many more books in his life, such as The Grand Design, A Briefer History of Time, and The Universe in a Nutshell, to name a few. Now, these are all important things to the scientific community in regards to understanding black holes and much of theoretical physics, But what makes it even more incredible is that he did all of this without ever being able to talk or write directly. That's right, virtually everything he did was first done in his mind, sitting with his own thoughts, sitting with his own mathematics skills and intelligence and wonder of the universe. And then all he had to transfer all of this information in his mind were computer programs such as voice boxes to get his words out, to get his sentences out, which took quite a while, and of course mathematical computers such as calculators, which are very common to us that we can type on right away, but for him he had to use slowly with just the tip of a finger or with the movement of his eyes eventually. This is mind-blowing when you think of just how high the mortality rate is for people with ALS, and that instead of just moping around with ALS the rest of his life, he wrote multiple best-selling books and devised multiple scientific theories that changed the face of black holes. In essence, you wouldn't find a physicist today on any level that hasn't read A Brief History of Time or has been influenced by Stephen Hawking in some way. They probably just don't exist. That's how worldwide he was and how influential he was with his work. Some of his most known quotes include, "Although I cannot move and I have to speak through a computer, in my mind I am free," as well as, "However difficult life may seem, there is always something you can do to succeed at." And finally, "You're just an advanced breed of monkeys on a minor planet of a very average star. But we can understand the universe in a sense, and that makes us something very special." Stephen Hawking was the epitome in the scientific community of overcoming all odds, whether they be doctors' diagnoses or the idea that he could ever write or think up these theories and get them out of his system at all when he was trapped in a sort of prison of the mind and body. But he did. He overcame every possible barricade to him and became one of the most well-known scientists of all time. And in a nutshell, that is what makes him one of the world's greatest teachers. And it is quite sombering that he has just left the planet and returned back to the universe that he loved to think of so much. So rest in peace, Stephen Hawking. And if you are interested in Stephen Hawking, again, just Google A Brief History of Time. The books are available on sale virtually anywhere you might look. And that is episode 1 of World's Greatest Teachers. Next week's teacher will be decided by you once you comment below and we see who the top voted teacher is that I think you guys should know about and that I agree with, that I think we should explain in depth. And if you enjoy this video, please...
Okay. So yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that we lost Stephen Hawking, a really, really great mind of any generation. He definitely left a legacy for not only scientists, but also just everyone else in general. I don't know where, I think that it's better safe to say that he returned to the universe, because I don't want to get into the whole heaven or hell thing, but yeah, he did live a good life. But yeah, I mean, he definitely is someone who, I mean, I don't know everything about. I mean, there's some things that I know somewhat. I know that he was a physicist and definitely made a huge impact on that scale of things. So it's just a really good way to kind of make sure that his memory remains immortal, is to just remember his legacy and to just keep on doing what he did. Yeah, so that's Stephen Hawking. The next teacher is Alan Watts. Okay. Add. Okay, here we go.
For personal and spiritual growth. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like, subscribe, and leave me a comment letting me know why. Greetings, my name is Vashuddha, or Koi, and welcome to episode 2 of World's Greatest Teachers. As always, if there's a teacher you guys want me to go into detail about that I agree belongs in this series, please comment them down below as you continue to watch this video, and I'll check out some of the most upvoted comments. Watts. Now, for many teachers, they are a direct product of their time, and their days end up reflecting that time period. But this week's teacher, to me and to many who still discover him 40 plus years after his death, his work, it is the opposite. It is eternal, and the times he lived in became a product of some of the words he spoke. And this man is named Alan Watts, a British philosopher among the many, many other titles ranging from Christianity to Zen Buddhism to a professor and everything else in between. Alan Watts was born on January 6th, 1915, and died at 58 years old on November 16th, 1973. Now, that is 43 years ago. I make this known that it was 43 years ago because after this video, when you go off and listen to his lectures, I want you to just keep in mind that this isn't somebody lecturing in the past year or even past decade, but almost half a century ago. And that's how timeless his work is. But even saying that Alan Watts died isn't really something Alan Watts would agree with, because Alan Watts wasn't really Alan Watts. Or at least there wasn't any specific Alan Watts that we could encapsulate in any way, which was part of his teachings, which we'll get to in a little bit. But Alan Watts grew up as an only child who was fascinated by nature and this experience known as life. The cacophony of all these different things going on and coalescing all the time, all around him. He grew up as an only child, so a lot of where he got his inspiration wasn't from other people, but was from this experience called life and the planet itself, just kind of occurring and happening. And this later life would go on to make him one of the world's foremost poetic speakers and teachers in the Western world on religions and thoughts such as Taoism, Zen Buddhism, and more. Quite frankly, nobody else in the Western world has before or since bridged the gap between a Western understanding of these very, very odd and hard to define Eastern concepts, especially things like Zen, the way that Alan Watts did. He is simply in a league of his own, so to speak. But he began his journey at a young age, discovering Buddhism in London, spending times at temples, learning about these philosophies, and constantly pressing all the traveling teachers and authors that came through the temple and came through London about the nature of Buddhism, about the nature of suffering, about Zen and all its form, or should I say, formlessness. And if you want to know more about Zen, you can go above and click the video I did on it a while back to learn really what Zen is or isn't. A lot of which Watts would come to understand has to do with the wishy-washiness of definition, of words, of ideas, of this experience being controlled by the way we express it through the languages we are raised with. We think they free us, but in reality, Watts would teach that they kind of box us into having to describe life through these words, which is actually very limiting. And so he continued to deepen his practice into Zen Buddhism, never fully becoming a Roshi or any of these heightened, specific states of achievement. But he kept searching, kept looking for understanding, and he moved into Christianity, eventually becoming a priest in this theology of Christianity, really diving into the Western theology after he spent so much time with Eastern mysticism. And after a while, kind of taking up the teachings of Christianity, its understanding, he moved back into a more Zen mind state that he would kind of hold for the rest of his life, but all the while using these Christian values that the West understood to formulate his expressive tendencies to explain what these Zen ideals were. He would do so by becoming a teacher, later a professor, and this is where Alan Watts began to gain his notoriety, his fame, so to speak, was through what he wrote, through what he spoke, and through what was recorded. There are hundreds of lectures done by Alan Watts that were done in classrooms and in lecture halls around the world during his book tours and during his years as a professor at these colleges. These lectures are all over YouTube. If you just type in Alan Watts lectures above, you will see hundreds of hours of them. And the way he spoke, the way he explained these philosophies, the nature of consciousness, the essence of life as something describable, was just a mind-blowing thing in the early 1950s and into the 60s. It was just even a decade before its real peak in the 60s era, but still today resonates with the youth finding his work online, with how precisely he was able to capture the essence of how we are raised and how we can learn to see things in a new light according to these Eastern ideals. He was always thinking, always trying to not get it, but just sit with the idea of beingness at all. And he wrote a lot of books on these topics. Some of these books known as The Book on the Taboo Against Knowing Who You Are, The Way of Zen, which is arguably Watts' most famous work and has always highly been regarded as the best Western translation of Zen to ever grace publicity. Become What You Are, The Wisdom of Insecurity, another very famous book in the West, Psychotherapy, East and West, and many more. I think he wrote over 20 plus books over the course of his life, all of which are available online. And this in itself is an achievement, but one of the big things that I've always had honor and respect for Watson doing, and this is something that a lot of other people notice as well, and why he's always kind of, I think, been accepted as generations kind of evolve, but continue wanting to seek spiritually in a sense, is that he would talk about himself as an entertainer, right? He would never say that I am a guru or a teacher. He would say, I am Alan Watts, an entertainer, giving you these spiritual topics for you to learn about. I am just sharing something with you in an entertaining way. I want you to make this life something you can enjoy and see me as entertainment, right? Even if it's spiritual entertainment, he would always make that known. He would say life is playful. Now, that would be a reoccurring theme in his work, that the playful nature of life is what we have to seek out, the enjoyability of it. Even on an esoteric level, we have to see the playfulness and absurdity of it completely. And this is why he continued to seek and learn and evolve his own consciousness throughout his life, from Taoism and Zen Buddhism into Christianity, back into Zen Buddhism, eventually being heavily influenced by Hinduism and Advaita Vedanta, one of the practices that I follow. And these just all continuously came into an amazing realm of mind space that he could hold, going into any topic you could ever question him about, with his own personality in it, which was very comedic, very joyous. And he would always talk about the idea of sincerity without seriousness, the essence of really being with it without attaching to the fears that come with taking it too seriously. All in all, Alan Watts is an amazing teacher, one that I think will not be rivaled in what he did to help the West as a Westerner more than anything for decades and decades, if not centuries to come. So I would definitely suggest you guys go learn more about Alan Watts. Watch some of his lectures above. Just type in Alan Watts lectures and go wild. If you have any questions or comments,
So there's that video. So yeah, the first thing that I'm going to mention is it gave the list of books that Alan Watts wrote. I'm already intrigued by some of them, like The Way of Zen, the Psychotherapy East and West. In fact, even Coy Fresco himself, he even has a couple books that are already out that I want to get at some point. They're really, really cheap. Just go on Amazon and his name, and if you're into these kinds of books, I know you can get them if you want. I definitely want to get them at some point. But yeah, I mean, I think so far when it comes to, I was mentioning how I think in the last video I did that Ben Corson would have to be my favorite pastor as far as, or speaker of God as far as Western philosophy and pastor goes. Not to say that everyone else is bad. I mean, everyone's got negatives about their teaching. I think I even mentioned how one of the things that I didn't necessarily disagree with, but have a hard time trying to fully grasp, is that God is a God of hope, and that being hopeless is bad. That there are other teachers that are from the West that I like. Like from Joel Osteen to Dominic Down, the main pastor of my church, to Dr. Charles Stanley, all these different Western guys. And then you hear guys like Alan Watts, who I feel like when it comes to the Eastern way of thinking, I feel like I like him because in order to understand really what the world is and everything in his place in the universe, he started off following Eastern philosophies, and still having that in mind, he went into organized religious systems of the West, became a priest or a reverend, and wanted to learn um, Western philosophies, and then regardless of whether he decided on how big of influences that was to him, went back to Eastern. And it's just a good example of kind of someone who kind of wants to do a spiritual rebellion. Is like, if someone was born in East and they want to find out what the Western is, and then they want to return to the East, but also taking in some of the Western. It's kind of how I am, except it's reversed. I was born under Western philosophy thinking, that there's only one God and it's only the Christian God and all these different things. And I'm at the point where I'm literally not only researching more on the Western stuff, but I'm also researching Eastern. And some, not all, but some of the Eastern philosophies I actually find to be quite true and in agreement. There are some that I don't agree with, and there are some that I'm on the fence with, and that's totally all right. But yeah, so that's Alan Watts for me. The next one, actually the final one, is this guy named Osho Rajneesh, the best and the worst teacher. So I think we're gonna get a little controversial now, which, if you're into that kind of thing when it comes to this kind of stuff, in order to grow in your spiritual evolution with God, then join in with me. If not, then you may want to just end the video here, watching this. But here we go, Osho.
Welcome to Koi's Corner, a channel for personal and spiritual growth. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like, subscribe, and leave me a comment letting me know why. Greetings, my name is Rishuddha or Koi, and welcome back to episode 3 of World's Greatest, or in this case, not so great teachers. And today we'll be talking about the essence of controversy itself when it comes to spiritual teachings through a man named Rajneesh, or more commonly known as Osho. Because you've probably seen the name Osho on books, in stores, or somewhere, because he has written literally hundreds of books based on his teachings. But before he became known as Osho, he was Rajneesh, Bhagwan Rajneesh. And although he knew a lot about spirituality, many would debate that he was at all a spiritual person. In fact, that's where the controversy comes from, is that many think he was really just a bad person, a very blinded person, a lost person who used spirituality as a tool for power. Born Chandra Jain on December 11th, 1931, Osho, again known as Rajneesh, was an Indian yogi and guru who died on January 19th, 1990 at the age of 58. Again, although many consider him a guru and he would take that title seriously himself, others just saw him as a crazy criminal cult leader. This even includes the United States legal system, who convicted him, but we'll get to that at the end of the video. I could do a whole video on the issues of Osho himself, but that has already been done in a documentary called Wild Wild Country, which I highly suggest you recommend on Netflix. Anyways, Osho was the oldest of 11 children, and he was a very, very anti-systematic thinker. Even from a young age, he was known for this, of questioning the system, the caste system, Hinduism as a religion, culture as a whole. He just didn't fit in with this society and knew that he wouldn't. This is why, as he got older and into college, he studied philosophy and eventually became a teacher. And by teacher, I mean he was an employed professor in Raipur for almost a decade. But this was until he decided to leave and devote his entire life to the expansion of human consciousness, to embracing awareness and getting out of the system. And that included getting out of the system of having a 9-to-5 and being a teacher in a school. He didn't want these limits. He wanted us to awaken by any means necessary. And when I say any means, I mean any means. Drugs, sex, All these crazy things, he was a very big advocate of them throughout his entire life. Due to being such a renowned professor, a popular professor, when he decided to leave this school and start teaching around the globe, he had many connections, especially in India. He had already amassed a big following that loved his philosophy and his teachings of close to 30,000 people that would really show up anywhere he went. He was a very big name, even starting out in India. And he would teach about these Vedantic ideals, but in a much more modern way. Again, the essence of human consciousness, how to awaken, how to be in society and still increase our spiritual awareness through drugs, through sex, through all these physical activities we do in daily life, of breaking out of these cultural norms of thinking we have to follow some sort of system to awaken. And this is partly where he came up with something known as dynamic meditation, which is still pretty popular today, that he created. And as his teachings grew and his followers grew, the extremism of awakening outside of the system grew too. He actually started a group called the Neo-Sannyasis, which basically said, instead of becoming a sannyasi, a renunciate, renouncing the world and working towards God unification, he said embrace the world, embrace the physical, embrace the experiences, almost in a tantric perspective, and use that to awaken, which went against a lot of the classical teachings and made a lot of classical followers upset. He said not to renounce pleasure to see God, but to embrace pleasure to see God. This came forward in his most controversial book, Sex to Superconsciousness, which you can find online. Osho really did embody this stuff. He was said to engage in orgies and in drug-fueled occurrences with students and teachers alike, really embracing what he was speaking about. And this caused a major stir because it really went against everything that was known to the cultures and societies of that time with how we should focus on bettering ourselves or understanding God. But after running into issues with building an ashram in India itself, he moved to a space in Oregon and founded a community known as Rajneeshpuram, one of the most controversial communities to ever be founded on American soil. And this is where it gets absolutely crazy over about the next few years. Many who were in the community would just say it's utopian, societal, spiritual community where you can grow and be free to awaken at your own leisure. But anyone outside of it who had a clear view of what was going on said the opposite, because it was in reality a full-fledged cult led by Osho to embrace all the things he wanted to embrace about his personal life, according to everyone outside of it or anyone who left. And in my opinion, it represents just how easily the ego can really destroy even a spiritual teacher that was as highly regarded as Osho was. With over 5,000 residents living at Rajneeshpuram normally, it was a spiritual haven for hippies. But as time got on, communities around Rajneeshpuram and in the neighboring cities and counties got more and more upset, and this is where the problems really started. Osho became much more of a dictator-like figure, ordering Ma Anand Sheela, one of his disciples, to really do anything he requested of her. And this meant even things that were against the law and, in all reality, morally wrong completely, no matter what philosophy you practice. She ordered the murders and poisonings of U.S. citizens and even tried to rig elections in the county by bringing in homeless people to vote and then kicking them out afterwards. It was just, in all honesty, a shit show. And as Osho became more popular in the U.S., many rich people came to live in the community, and he became more and more influenced by the affluence of American culture. He began to wear Rolexes, diamonds all the time. He had the largest collection of Bentleys in all of the world for a period. Many in the community would try to justify this by saying he knew it was a game and so he wasn't being serious. But if you look back on his lectures, especially in older age, you could see just how upset, how brittle, how fragile, how angry he always was, and how really ingrained in this materialism he became, and how ingrained he became in Rajneesh, his name. But like I said, watch the Wild Wild Country documentary. It talks about all this for way more detail and many more hours. So after all this drama and dragging his name through the mud, he eventually was arrested by the United States government, who kicked him out of the country essentially, allowed him to never come back, and what did he do after this? He tried to enter hundreds of other countries, all of which denied him entry because of all the damage he'd done in the U.S. and all the controversy surrounding him, eventually meaning he had to go back to India where he began, but also being the last place he wanted to go. And in 1989, he switched his name from Bhagwan Rajneesh to the name we know today as Osho, which meant in some wordings, the Blessed One, but also Osho was a kind of terminology for the ocean. And he made sure that all his prior work as well was known from the name of Osho instead of Rajneesh. Many would wonder why this happened. Was it to get away from the name Rajneesh, or was it for another reason? Well, we'll never know, because the next year, or less than a year later actually, Osho passed away, and that's where that story ended. Now, the Rajneesh community itself completely crumbled when he had to leave. It fell apart and is gone, but there's still websites of teaching about Osho. His books are still as popular as ever, but I don't really see him as a teacher I would ever promote or push to anyone, but that's just my opinion. I did read his book, From Sex to Superconsciousness, but that really is the teaching of Osho, who he was, who Rajneesh was, and the controversy surrounding this quote-unquote guru, who was really just a common folk. And if you have any questions or comments, please make sure.
Well, before I get started, I just like to say, remember, so just as a side note, remember that one video I did yesterday where Ben Corson referred to Jesus as probably the greatest rebel on earth, which is still insane to me that I never heard Jesus referred to that way. If there was a person second to that, it would probably be Osho. Now, there were things that I definitely agreed with Coy as far as not promoting him to anybody, as far as, having, people killed and all that stuff. I think he got too much set into the material world to where he was started to wearing bling and stuff like that, and all that. That being said, I do think that even though he is a guy that I wouldn't recommend to anybody, I do think there is at least a small percentage of what he taught that can be learned. Not everything, but some things. Which is one of the reasons why it says that he's the best and the worst teacher, It's one of those things where you only take from him what serves you. The best stuff about him you take, the worst stuff about him you don't take. It's simple as that. There's no need to overcomplicate it. So I'm thinking of not checking out, but like maybe looking at some of the books. The Sex to Superconsciousness, it sounds interesting. I don't know if I'm ever going to read that one, but I may check and see some of his other bodies of work and see exactly what kind of person he was as far as, spiritually goes. The one thing that I can say that I do agree with on him was that he didn't want to fit into any sort of system. He was very anti-systematic, which I'm for in some way. Like, for example, when it comes to believing in God and following God, I would rather believe in God and follow God, not a part of a system, than following and believing in God, being a part of a system, Like, you can follow God and be anti-systematic instead of following God and being systematic, But yeah, so that's my video on the Advaita Vedanta philosophy and these different teachers. So now I'm going to close the video, but I'm going to now we're going to enter a time of meditation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this. I'm going to put that there. I want to make sure that it doesn't fall. Okay. Damn it. Hold on. I'm still here. Hold on. Totally did not where this. Okay. So let me try something. Let me move this here. Hold on. I want to do this. Nothing's gonna stop me. Okay. There we go. Okay, I think I got it. Okay. So Yeah, we're gonna enter. I'm gonna enter a time of meditation with you guys. I'm only having the computer on me right now because I'm getting the song ready. Um, Now, this is only gonna be a few minutes. Now, there are different songs that I like to that I like to um, uh, that I like to meditate to. I like to meditate to some Enya. I like to meditate to any form of instrumental music. And this may sound kind of silly, but bear with me. I am about to lead us all into a 3.5 minutes uh, meditation of just getting the mind ready for the day, and the music that we're going to be meditating to is to the Legend of Zelda, more specifically the Legendary Hero theme. And may sound silly, but this is definitely like I've listened to this I don't know how many times, and every single time I just think to myself, man, this is a song that whenever I listen to it, I just feel at peace, you know? And, you know, um, great rest of your day. If you want to join me in this, feel free. If not, then that's totally okay too.